Welcome to the Jerusalem Dispatch podcast, broadcast from the studios of the Jerusalem Post. This is day 597 of the October 7th War. I'm Elliot Jager.
And I'm Calev Ben-David. And as always, our accents are maybe that of two Jews out of New York City, but our vantage point for many years now is that of longtime residents of Jerusalem, looking out from here onto Israel, the Middle East, and the entire Jewish world. Let me start by introducing my co-host, Elliot Jager. Elliot is a political scientist, an author, and a journalist, and you could find his fine work these days on Substack.
That's absolutely true. Thank you. And with me is Calev Ben-David. He anchors ILTV's Security Brief program and is a former senior anchor for I-24 News Channel. Calev is also a former managing editor of the Jerusalem Post, and before that, Bloomberg News Israel bureau chief.
And enough with the credits, Elliot, because we have lots to cover today. Unfortunately, a lot of unfortunate news. Above all that, the terrible terror attack on Washington, D.C. Here in Israel, a very dramatic new appointment of the, what in Israel is called a Shabak, but known abroad as the Shin Bet, the Israel's internal security authority. Of course, there's all these leaks coming out now. Washington plans to attack in Iran. And we're going to also mark the birthday, the 83rd birthday just yesterday of a very special Jewish artist, Robert Allen Zimmerman, better known to people as Bob Dylan. But let's start actually tomorrow. Big day, big celebration for some, certainly, here in Jerusalem, Jerusalem Day.
That's right, Calev. Tomorrow is Jerusalem Day, 58 years since the liberation of Jerusalem from Jordan in 1967. So festivities begin tonight on the eve of Jerusalem Day in the Old City with Orthodox evening services and the unfurling of a huge flag in the Western Wall Plaza. And nowadays the holiday is marked mainly, I would say, by Orthodox nationalist Israelis. Tomorrow, Monday, May 26th, we're recording on Sunday. Starting in the afternoon around 4:30, there's going to be a flag dance procession with boys and girls separate. The boys and their parents are to meet on one street. The
Separate
girls
but equal?
And the girls and their parents are to meet on
Somewhere.
another street.
Right.
And they're going to be ultimately marching to the Western Wall through the Old City gates. And around 7:30 in the evening, there are various Orthodox rabbis, ministers in the Netanyahu government, and others will lead festivities at the Western Wall. But this is an opportunity, Calev, and as some of our faithful listeners know, what we try to do is leave you with something, some content that you can, substantive content.
Beyond the headlines.
Yeah, beyond what's happening in the deluge of day-to-day news. So what I want to do is give you a sort of State of Jerusalem report on Jerusalem Day.
Where we have resided for, these many decades.
Yes, that's right, where Calev and I both live. Let's start with the good news. Jerusalem is a well-run city, in my opinion. Everything that I say is going to be in my opinion.
That's definitely in your opinion, but go on.
Under Mayor Moshe Leon, I think the city is cleaner than before his tenure. I think the garbage is picked up. We've got fantastic hospitals, great universities, wonderful museum, world-class museum, theater, a changing skyline, a very changing skyline.
Right outside the window.
Right outside our window. Building everywhere.
Fabulous new National Library.
Fantastic new National Library. New bus lines. A new additional light rail line on the surface. Calev, I think if you come here as a visitor, you see a thriving and cosmopolitan city. And Jerusalem is indeed the largest city in terms of population in the state of Israel, more than 1 million people. A city built on hills, as I often like to tell people, a city embedded into the West Bank with Judea to the south and Samaria to the north. About 593,000 of Jerusalem's residents, that's 57% of the people who live in Jerusalem are Jews, 38% or 400,000 are Arabs, and the rest are expats and other hangers-on, and they're welcome and we love them. Roughly half of the city's Jewish population is Haredi. That is, when I use the term, I mean in the sense of insular ultra-Orthodox. 40% of the Jewish pupils enrolled in Jerusalem schools are enrolled in non-Zionist Haredi schools.
True. But let me point out, a lot of
40%.
people, including many Israelis, actually think the ultra-Orthodox population represents a majority in Jerusalem. It actually does not. It's certainly
It represents roughly half the city's Jewish.
right, a little below half, but it's trending certainly towards becoming the majority, but it is not currently.
Half of the Jewish community in Jerusalem is Haredi. Let's get this clear. Half of the Jewish majority in Jerusalem is Haredi. 40% of the Jewish pupils are Haredim in the Haredi schools. 40% of the pupils in Jerusalem schools are Haredi.
Yes.
So it's important. No, there's 23% are Orthodox nationalists, what you used to call national religious. The 23% of the national religious also include, in the public school system, by the way, include the regular school system. So really, the heavy plurality of young children in the school system, in the Jewish school system, are Haredi.
Right, and a majority of the Jewish population
Is Orthodox.
Is Orthodox in one form or another.
Or traditional.
Or traditional.
Some 36% of Jerusalem pupils. Another factoid is that 36% of Jerusalem pupils attend Arabic language schools. So to untangle these numbers without getting too dense, between the Arabs, Calev, between the Arabs and the Haredim, the majority of the pupils learn a non-Zionist curriculum.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And there are other great numbers that I can throw at you for the State of Jerusalem report. We had 25,000 babies born in Jerusalem in the previous year, the year that the statistics are available for. Jerusalem has the highest fertility rate than the national average.
Among both Jews and Arabs. Orthodox Jews.
Both Jews and Arabs. And in Israel, by the way, Jews have thank God, a very high fertility rate. Whether they're religious or not religious, it doesn't matter. But what's interesting about Jerusalem is that the fertility rate of Jewish women is 66%, and to the national average, whereas to Arab women, it's much lower. So that's kind of interesting. More, as we both know, just from the people we know, more young people who are not Orthodox are leaving Jerusalem than are coming to Jerusalem. We know that the young people who are here tend to be here for university, Hebrew University, Betzalel, Shalem.
When it comes time, especially to work, they look elsewhere, especially in the Tel Aviv
to make
area.
a living. Jerusalem's population is young. It's 31% of the city's population are children below the age of 14. That's really phenomenal.
Right.
Think about that. And this I'm not speaking to you, Calev, you're a young man, but I'm speaking to my contemporaries. Only 9.5% of the city's population is 65 or older.
Well,
so, this is a young population.
I just made the cut.
But let me also say a couple of other things about how poor and divided Jerusalem is. Jerusalem is one of the poorest cities in the country.
Yeah.
Jerusalem, Beit Shemesh, Bnei Brak, Lod. Technically, Modim Elite is the poorest, but Jerusalem is among the poorest cities in the country. 22% of Jewish residents, 66% of Arab residents don't finish the month in the green. They finish it in the red, meaning they spend more money than they have. The underprivileged, of course, are exempted from taxes, and some people don't pay taxes, but many others, the rest of us, pay
too many taxes.
The highest municipal taxes in the country we pay.
We pay, yes.
The highest municipal taxes in the country.
Bigger every year.
And as we came up Jaffa Street to the studio, we saw what we Israelis call a real balagan. Would you explain to people what that means?
It's a mess. It's because they've suspended most of the lines of what's called the light rail, which has become the major form of public transportation for a lot of the city. Right. And they are attaching 2 new lines. They are expanding the system.
Absolutely.
But in order to do so now, they have shut down most of the light rail, including right below us on Jaffa Street for,
14 weeks.
14 14 weeks. Can you imagine?
So the city
It
is
would be like a subway in New York. Can you imagine if they shut it down for 14 weeks? There'd be like there would be revolt in the street.
But things are no worry, we won't be revolting
No.
there. Well, as the British say, we're not revolting. The city is building. There's a construction boom, as I said. It's a traffic nightmare. The rail will be shut, as you said, for 14 weeks. But because the Netanyahu government's judicial putsch and the sense of that the October 7th war turned into Operation Save Bibi, there are endless disruptive demonstrations that are going on that sort of make it difficult for just ordinary life. The Haredim also have their demonstrations. So
Against the increased attempts to enlist them in the army.
Right. So I'm simply pointing out some of the poverty and the divisions of the city. The other thing to know is that Arabs get the short end of the stick in the city.
In terms of municipal services,
Right.
of course.
In terms of, and I think one of the reasons is they opt out not to vote. When
Yes.
they opt out not to vote, that means they have no influence on the city council. They could probably hold 40 seats on the city council if they voted, or 40% of the seats on the city council if they voted, but they don't vote. And the consequences are that Palestinian homes are demolished by the municipality. 181 homes were demolished in 2024 for being built without the necessary permits.
Right.
What's the problem, Calev?
That they don't get permits.
You can't get the necessary permits.
No,
What do we call that back in the old country?
Catch-22.
Catch 22, right?
Okay, but I want to add a footnote there because though it's true what you say in terms of it, the Palestinians in Jerusalem, and I say Palestinians, not necessarily Arabs, because they're not Israelis. Most of them have not taken the option, which they could have and to some degree can.
Right.
That's a matter of bureaucracy, whether they still can or not. They are financially better off than a lot of the brethren in the West Bank. Why? Because they can work within Israel. And a lot of people misunderstand. They think even though what we call the green line, the separation between the 1967 border and pre-1967, or Israel proper might say, runs through the city, right through the municipal lines of the city, the security barrier. And I say barrier because in most areas it's a fence, but in the Jerusalem area it tends to be a concrete wall. Does not run through the city. Jerusalem is not divided. Right. The barrier runs right outside the municipal boundaries of Jerusalem.
Right.
So those few 100,000 Palestinians that live within the municipal boundaries of Jerusalem have no barrier to travel.
Right.
They can travel freely within Jerusalem, certainly in Israel, and as such they can work in Jerusalem. In fact, a lot of the municipal jobs, certainly hospitals, civil service jobs, certainly in the hospitals, practically every pharmacy, you're seeing these Palestinian Arabs who have what they call Israel residency cards.
They have the same blue ID cards that we have, the same Taudat Zahut. That means they have Bituach Leumi. That means they have national health insurance. They have the health coverage that we have. So essentially, people who live within the boundaries of Jerusalem, whether they're Jews or Arabs, have the same access to the same services.
100%. And on our daily lives, Elliot and me and you, we have contact with these Palestinian Arabs, be it our health club we go to, because we live in an area which is right bordering a couple of these Palestinian villages within Jerusalem.
Right.
And in other ways too. So it's divided. Certainly, it is divided politically, socially, but it's all part. It's intermingled in terms of the actual movement of people, at least within Jerusalem.
Absolutely, with the proviso that there are still a few neighborhoods, former Jordanian Jerusalem, that were annexed within metropolitan Jerusalem that are no-go zones, and these are neighborhoods that somehow, for one reason or another, wound up on the other side of the security barrier for logistical reasons or for security reasons, but yet the territory itself has already been annexed to Jerusalem. The consequence is that there are about 80,000 Palestinian Arabs who are Jerusalem citizens, who are expected to pay Jerusalem taxes, who do have the Jerusalem blue ID cards, but they don't have police protection. They can't pick up the phone and call an ambulance. Their garbage is not collected, and they have to pass through a checkpoint in order to do well the other. So it's complicated. My argument, is that with sovereignty, with Jewish sovereignty over Jerusalem comes responsibility.
Yes.
That's my argument.
Yeah, sure.
If we want to show our sovereignty, then the best way to show that we are sovereign is that no matter where you walk in Jerusalem, you see the same streets, same cleanliness level of the streets, same level of garbage collection, same level of service, same level of parks for children. That's how you show
That's how it should
that
be.
you are sovereign in Jerusalem. Now, let me just say a little bit more about the Zionist and non-Zionist population in Jerusalem. Roughly 40% of the population of Jerusalem, we said, is Arabs, and foolishly they boycott the elections. And then you have a whole chunk of the Jewish population that are anti-Zionist Haredim. And then you have a much larger chunk of the Haredi population that are non-Zionist. In the last Knesset elections, that is the last national elections held in Israel, November 2022, before the current war, Jerusalem showed itself to be a city politically with a non-Zionist majority. Plurality. I'll tell you what I mean. The parties that won the plurality of the votes in the city of Jerusalem were 23.8% to the United Torah Judaism Party, non-Zionist.
Right, not anti-Zionist,
Not
but
anti-Zionist.
non-Zionist.
Although they have a Peleg Yerushalmi aspect to them that is anti-Zionist, but let's leave that aside. We'll say non-Zionist.
Right.
23.8% Calev, non-Zionist to United Torah Judaism. And the second largest plurality went 18.31% to Shas,
Right.
another non-Zionist party where the chief leader of the party, the former leader of the party, has told Haredim, Sephardi Haredim abroad not to come to Israel because there's a threat that they might have to go to the army, and he's told his followers here never to go into the army. So these parties represent constituents that do not serve in the IDF, do not want to do national service, and that are right now, these two parties are boycotting the Netanyahu government in the Knesset. They're not showing up for votes precisely because they want to pressure the government on the issue of not serving in the army. So my argument is that the plurality of the city's Zionist-leaning Knesset vote went to Likud, went 19% to Likud, and then to the combined Chardal neo-Kahanist ticket of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich.
Right.
All right. And then when you start talking about people who don't vote that way, quite frankly, when you're talking about people like me, who are looking to vote for a tolerant centrist, even left of center Zionist party, then you're already getting into the single digits. So
Sure.
I think that this is a real problem. So let's go back to Jerusalem Day and wrap it up. People are going to be dancing with flags.
Mm-hmm.
What they want is to build the third temple, begin animal sacrifices. If this involves demolishing...
Well, not everybody.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Obviously, not everybody. We haven't done a survey. But what we do see is big ads, quarter-page ads in the Friday newspapers, urging people to go up to the Temple Mount. And that is the purpose of that is bring things a couple of steps closer to the beginning of the rebuilding of the temple. Since 2009, Calev, there have been in the old days, Orthodox people didn't go up to the Temple Mount.
Right.
Since 2009, that's changed. It used to be hundreds of people going up. Then it became thousands in 2024. Right now, the latest data that we have is that in 2024. 58,000 people have made the pilgrimage up to the Temple Mount. There's a students of the Temple Mount Yeshiva go up there every single day after they go to the mikveh. Here's the problem, Calev, and the reason I'm harping on this. This transforms the Palestinian-Israeli conflict into a war between maybe 16 million Jews, a religious war between maybe 16 million Jews and 2 billion Muslims. The status quo, which forbade Orthodox prayers on the Temple Mount, was lifted by a Jerusalem judge. You can go up there and pray. You can put on tefillin. You can genuflect. And the Returning to the Mount movement has been offering 50,000, a reward of 50,000 shekel to anyone who succeeds in sacrificing a goat. I hope I'm not giving anybody any ideas. Better you should play the lottery. So I'll end with this. None of this is lost on our Arab and Muslim social media. Mm-hmm. They follow this more acutely than we do.
Right.
And so on this Jerusalem Day, I am not so much in the mood to celebrate. Beside the fact that Jerusalem Day is now so parochial and so oriented towards the Temple Mount, we're also at war. We have 1,800 or more Israeli citizens and soldiers killed. We have 58 captives who are in Gaza, and most of them, and some of them are alive, languishing in dark and rancid tunnels. The IDF is expanding the war. And it's hard to celebrate when scores of the enemy non-combatants, indeed, are dying because Hamas is using them as fodder for war. So I guess I'm just not right now in the proper frame of mind to celebrate.
I can understand that, Elliot. It's quite interesting. I came to Jerusalem. I moved here permanently in 1986. Jerusalem Day had a very different tone then. This is a thing that has developed over the years. It has become almost, I would say, almost kind of like an alternative Independence Day for the communities, some of the communities you spoke about. And it's taken on this so far nationalistic turn of the march through Arab neighborhoods, etc. It's unfortunate because Israel, again, the Jerusalem I came to, Teddy Kallak, who, of course, thought it was a day to celebrate Israel reuniting the both sides of the city. He wanted to see Jerusalem be a beautiful mosaic.
Right.
To be fair, there was neglect of the Arab neighborhoods and the tensions with the ultra-Orthodox already then. But I think that dream has been certainly put on hold.
Yeah.
But Jerusalem is a city of dreams. There is the dream Jerusalem and the other Jerusalem, and let's wait and see which Jerusalem, where Jerusalem ultimately goes to. I'm still here. You're still here.
Not going anywhere.
A lot of people we know have left Jerusalem. We're sticking it out. So I guess at the end of the day, we have to be somewhat hopeful and even a little bit optimistic that this Jerusalem will be the Jerusalem that it should be.
Amen.
All right, let's turn away from Jerusalem for a bit because we have to now look abroad, because I really think in some ways the most significant news story, or certainly the one that generated the most headlines over the past week, was the shooting in Washington, D.C., the tragic death of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, two young people shot outside. We have to stress this. Even though a lot of people are calling him Israel Embassy staff, it's clear the shooter would have no idea that that's who he was shooting at, because this was actually an event held by the AJC, the American Jewish Committee, which was holding it in the Jewish Museum.
Right.
In Washington, D.C. So the shooter, Elias Rodriguez, someone who has been an anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, you could say extremist, pro-Hamas extremist, was the one who did the shooting. And Elliot, the symbolism. I mean, we've had previous attacks with the horrible shooting at the Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life. But imagine this was a shooting that many saw the writing on the wall.
Right.
At an American AJC, American Jewish Committee, a gala event outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, right by the mall. And ironically, the young people, one an American Jew, Sarah Milgram, who apparently was raised in the Reformed community in Kansas, where she's from, Kansas City, and in this outlying suburbs of the area. And this Yaron Lashinsky, fascinating her story,
yes,
because he is a part of this group of Christians. And a little confusion here, because he's been called a Messianic Jew, but he's not Jewish in any way. He's not Jewish. He is part of a group of Christians. Most people think of Messianic Jews as
halakhically Jewish people.
Halakhically Jewish people who accept Jesus. That's more like Jews for Jesus. But the Messianic Jewish community is more just a philosophy of people who think you can live a Jewish life
the way Jesus lived.
As a Christian.
Right.
But live a Jewish life. And that's who Yaron Lashinsky was. He was raised in that kind of family, German family, that very similar, you could almost argue, like the Templars that came to Jerusalem, ironically, in the 1800s, that settled here. And he came here, served in the army, how ironic that we were talking about the ultra-Orthodox
Not serving.
young people who are not serving.
Right.
And here is a German Christian who felt it was his calling to come to Israel and serve in the army. And it was that army service that enabled him to really get, citizenship and to work for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So in so many ways, as this crime, the symbolism of this crime goes beyond just the shooting of two people.
You know, what strikes me is that the American Jewish community, well, the first thing that strikes me is that what we do here in Israel impacts on the American Jewish community. I think we tend to forget that. But they have paid a price for the October 7th war. They've paid a price on the streets, in not just in the American Jewish community, of course, in the British Jewish community.
Of course.
So, I mean, I think
The world Jewish
the world Jewish community has paid a price, and I don't know that Israeli decision makers even give that a thought in terms of the impact that this will have on the diaspora Jewish community of what we do. Obviously, they're going to need to expand their security. They're going to need to get more help from the local government, from national government. But can I bring you to some things that maybe happen here that exacerbate their situation and raise the temperature? And that is the remarks and statements of various Israeli politicians or ex-politicians, and the way their statements are incendiary.
Right. And I would say on both sides of the political debate.
Absolutely on both sides.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Just to get your blood going. Finance Minister Smotrich has talked about cleansing Gaza.
Right.
All right.
Destroying
He's talked
it.
about destroying what's
Just
left.
in the past week.
He's used the word erasing.
Okay.
When talking about a Palestinian town in the West Bank. Admittedly, a Palestinian town from which terrorists have struck again and again, but erasing that town. He talked about sending Khan Yunis to the Stone Age.
Right.
There was a Likud MK who talked about erasing Gaza from the face of the earth. Minister Amichai Eliyahu talked about dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza. Don't tell that to the people in Ashkelon, by the way.
Yeah.
Shlomo Karchi talked about establishing settlements in Gaza. Ben-Gvir talked about opposing any humanitarian aid whatsoever in Gaza. Well, everything they say, they think they're just saying it to their constituency, or they're saying it to other Israelis because they're speaking in Hebrew. Calev, and they haven't wised up to the fact that what they're saying, and on the other side of the spectrum.
Yes. Yair Golan, of course, the former deputy chief of staff who acted so bravely on October 7th and now heads what's called the Democracy Party, which is an amalgamation of the what was the center-left Labor Party and Meretz, which was the real left, I would say, self-described left-wing party in Israel, is talking about how Israeli soldiers, are killing babies as a hobby and enjoying it, which was, I think, a terrible remark.
Right.
But he has since apologized, or said he has apologized, or he's clarified he meant the
Israelis don't apologize.
He didn't apologize. He said it was an attack on the political leadership, but the way he phrased it did sound terrible, like he was accusing the soldiers that once served under him. He's actually still in the reserves as a general. So, terrible remark. He's got a history, unfortunately, of making extremist remarks, and I think that rhetoric is also on the other side.
Absolutely,
it's sort of accusing soldiers of war crimes. And listen, even if but I do have to add, Elliot, even if Israeli politicians were not making these comments, this incitement against Israel is already out there in the world. The crazy talk about genocide in Israel, pro-Palestinian influence of backs killing of Israelis in D.C. Listen, if you really believe in genocide, if people are committing genocide, that is almost a thing. Genocide is not 40,000 people being killed, as terrible that is, over more than a year and a half of warfare in a densely urban area against a terrorist group. Genocide is 40,000 people going to the gas chamber in a single day That's genocide, not 40,000 in a war, in a fiercely fought war to rescue hostages over I'm not
as collateral.
I'm not, right. Yes, I'm
as
not
collateral
minimizing-
damage, as people who are being really held as
human
fodder by their
shields.
own, as human shields by their
Hamas,
own, by Hamas.
Right. So certainly, and then we have comments. Tom Fletcher last week, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations for Humanitarian Affairs, saying 14,000 babies will die in 48 hours. 48 hours from starvation. Of course, when people looked in, he was citing a report that talked about 14,000 babies suffering from potentially suffering malnutrition over a 9-month period. I mean, when you hear rhetoric like that, when unstable individuals, of which there are plenty, hear rhetoric like that, the writing was on the wall.
Right.
Shooting.
It doesn't excuse Elias Rodriguez, who was obviously, radicalized.
No, my point is the rhetoric around it just feeds the debate in every way. It's social media. And let me say, on this is not a partisan statement because it's on all sides of the far fringes of both sides of the political spectrum. It's very interesting that Sarah Milgram, the young lady who was killed, I said she was raised in the suburbs of Kansas City.
Right.
In 2014, a white supremacist killed 3 people at a shooting in a Jewish community center right near where her home was, her childhood home was. By the way, in that shooting, too, the 3 people killed were non-Jews. Someone opened up fire at a Jewish community center.
They happened to be using it.
They happened to be using it for the gym or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you could go online, you can go on YouTube and see footage of Sarah Milgram. 3 years after that, somebody graffitied her high school in this outside Kansas City with SWAT stickers, and she spoke. She was interviewed by a local Kansas station, saying, why it's not right that I have to worry about going to synagogue every Shabbat. So this was anti-Semitism, and deadly anti-Semitism emanating from the far right. Elias Rodriguez is coming from the far left. Both of the far right and far left are being fed by overheated rhetoric on both the right and the left, and this is a reality of which we're facing in this world, and people will have to wake up. Responsible people, as much as they can, will have to wake up and understand that they have to sort of tone down the rhetoric. I'm not saying one shouldn't be concerned on either side of what you are. These are real issues. There's real issues at stake. There's real lives at stake. But it's bad. The situation is bad enough without the incitement that is going on, the general incitement that is going on about what is happening either in Israel, support for Israel, in Gaza, involved with the government, etc.
Well said. Let's move on as briefly as possible to these cascade of leaks coming out of Washington about Israel's plans to attack Iran. And I always ask, when I read these in the New York Times and CNN, I always ask, who benefits from these leaks and why are they happening? Who do you think is leaking?
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I've seen this is a pattern that we have seen over more than a decade. In fact, over the past 15 years, I think these leaks are to pressure the coming. Probably now from Washington, from Trump administration officials trying to pressure the Iranians to sign a deal. I remember this kind of leaks happening and whole stories about the Israeli plan of attack in the period leading up to the 2015 JCPOA, Iran nuclear deal. I think that's what's involved here. I mean, not to say that, of course, Israel has always had plans, potential plans to attack Iran, and it's always running exercises. Most of the security officials, and I do speak with them, and now on my show Security Brief that I do, say that it's unlikely that Israel, they may damage the Iranian program, but could not really stop it without the assistance of the United States, certainly, just because of the scope of it.
Absolutely.
So that's how I would characterize what's happening.
Sometimes my sense is that the leaks are coming from the Trump administration. That's my sense of it.
But yes, as they came in the past from other administrations.
As they come from the other administration. I don't claim to know if Trump and Steve Witkoff are going to sell Israel out on Iran. I know that the Trump and Witkoff families are heavily invested in the Gulf right now, and a war with Iran is not going to help their business. And I don't see Iran as giving up on all enrichment, if that's the bottom line demand. And I also don't think that Mr. and Mrs. America want to go to war for Israel against, and that's the way it would be portrayed, and that's the way they would see it. And I think the interests of Mr. and this particular Mr. and Mrs. America are, as you've said in previous episodes, are supported by J.D. Vance and people like that. So and if you listen to what the Iranians are not quaking in their boots listening to these threats. They've been very clear. So here's the latest that I think is relevant. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the U.S. and Iran are working on some kind of interim agreement that would sort of kick the ball down the road, calm things down, take the military option off the table, take the whole stress of it'll be sort of a mini version of something Obama did with the intention of finishing negotiations. This is not going to be great for Israel. But we'll see what happens. The idea that Israel would go to war with Iran, I agree with you. In addition to all our other current wars, in addition to not having Europe backing, in addition against Trump's wishes, I don't see that as in play. I think we have to recognize that situation, I have to admit, it's somewhat discouraging that we heat up the Iran front when we all understand that in this particular case, pulling out of that Obama deal, as bad as it was then, pulling out without a plan B did not leave us in a better position.
It led us to where we are today. You know what, Elliot? Maybe we should have a little change of pace.
We need a change of pace, Calev.
And I want to talk. It's a celebration. Besides Jerusalem Day tomorrow, we actually had a significant day of celebration yesterday that I do want to bring up. It was a birthday.
Who do we have to wish a happy birthday to?
To a man I would call the most significant musician of our generation, of several generations of the past 50 years, I would say. I would say one of the three great songwriters in American history, along with Stephen Foster, Irving Berlin, and he's like Irving Berlin, another Jew. Robert Allen Zimmerman, better known from Duluth, Minnesota, better known, of course, as Bob Dylan, celebrating his 83rd birthday.
Happy birthday, Bob.
Happy birthday, Bob. He's, for an 83-year-old, he's been pretty active. He's still out there touring. He calls it, I think, the Endless Tour now or something, never-ending tour. He's had a huge revival this year because of this movie, A Complete Unknown, which was a big hit. Timothy Chalamet, who almost won an Academy Award playing him. He won maybe some other awards playing Bob Dylan. And maybe it turned on a whole new younger generation to Bob Dylan's music. And very interesting. I got to see that movie. I went to that movie along with the David Brin, who's one of the senior editors here, and a big music fan. He writes about music for The Post. And we went with a gentleman named Louis Kemp. We went to see the music here in Jerusalem, who was one of Bob Dylan's childhood friend and remained friends with Bob Dylan up till probably around like the turn of this century. Wow. So 50-year friendship with Bob Dylan. Louis Kemp, he now lives in Jerusalem. He became a religious Jew in middle age, but he grew up in a family that had a salmon business. They were one of the biggest sellers of lox, I guess, in America. So he grew up in Minnesota, childhood friend. He met Bob Dylan at Camp Herzl Minnesota.
Oh my God!
And stayed friends with Bob Dylan, lived with him at times. He produced the famous Rolling Thunder tour, and he now lives in Jerusalem. He made Aliyah just last year in his 80s.
Wow.
Yes, he became, like I said, through
I did read about
through
it.
Chabad, and we decided to go to the movie with him.
Right.
Here in Jerusalem, and he praised the movie, but we should stress it's very interesting. There's no mention of Bob Dylan being Jewish in the film because it only covers this period early in his career where he didn't really address his Jewish background other than singing a blues version of Hava Nagila Blues, which you could still go hear on. And in fact, didn't really address, only at one point in the movie do they address the fact that Zimmerman was his original, what's his original family name. So what wasn't a part of it, but Bob Dylan as a Jew and a Jewish artist has been fascinating through the years, because at one point he seemed to fall into evangelical Christianity and made a couple of albums that had to do with it, and then he seemed to come back more to Judaism. Louis Kemp, who we got to know and went to us movie, explained he was a part of that. He actually introduced Bob to a Rabbi Manis Friedman, a well-known Chabad rabbi, one of the leaders of the Chabad movement in the U.S. in the early 80s.
Right.
And Bob Dylan became quite close to Manis Friedman. And without ever making any formal announcements, I'm going back, leaving Christianity and go back to being a Jew. He just seemed to kind of sort of drift back more into the Jewish side of things. In 1983, in the early 80s, he came to Israel. He had a sort of bar mitzvah himself at the Western Wall, and you can see pictures of that with wearing tefillin and so that part of it. And he also, at the same time, in 1983, put out a song called "Neighborhood Bully."
Now that is one of my most fascinating Bob Dylan songs. "Neighborhood Bully." His enemies say he's on their land. They got him outnumbered about 1,000,000-1, and he's got no place to escape to, no place to run. He's the neighborhood bully.
Right. He lives just to survive. He's criticized and condemned for bailing alive. He's not supposed to fight back. He's supposed to have thick skin. He's supposed to lay down and die when his door is kicked in. Now, obviously, this was the context, 1983. This was in Israel was getting, at that time, unprecedented criticism because of the war in Lebanon and Sabra and Shatila. And Bob Dylan went against the grain and put out this song, "Neighborhood Bully." A lot of Dylan fans either try to ignore this song
Or didn't understand.
But clearly it's the probably most pro-Israel, pro-song ever put out by a major rock star.
Calev, this song, whenever I feel down, I downloaded it from, Apple Music or something. And whenever I feel like, oh, my God, I just listen to "Neighborhood Bully" over and over and over again. And I recommend it to all of our listeners.
Right.
And
So let me explain. Bob Dylan has never come out and said this is about Israel. He makes he's given up. In fact, a big part of that movie, Complete Unknown, was about the fact that he, in the early mid-'60s, he broke with the folk music because he did not want to make that kind of direct political music that he used to do. He wanted to be more personal, so we don't get any more like times or they are changing. Well, once or twice he'll have songs that have some political resonance, but certainly in terms of public statement, he's given up making it. He's not commented in any way about his Jewishness or what's happening in Israel in recent years or in decades, and not really about anything what's happening in the U.S. or anything. He just doesn't do that.
Right.
That's not his bag anymore.
Right.
But it doesn't erase the fact that he did put out "Neighborhood Bully" at a particularly difficult time. A song that, if you look at it and you listen to it, you would swear he was talking about the situation today. So I want to maybe just, if we could wrap it up, I want to mention another song that I think is particularly appropriate for Bob Dylan's 83rd birthday. It's a song called "Forever Young." Now this is the opening line of that song. May God bless you and may God bless and keep you always. Does that line sound familiar?
Yes, it does. Right.
That is
God bless and protect you. May the Lord shine His countenance
upon you. Yes, that it's the "Forever Young." That is, unlike "Neighborhood Bully," that's one of his songs that have become standards and definitely a favorite of Dylan fans, and even gone beyond that. Opens up really lifting the first line of what we call the priestly blessing, which is recited by Jews in almost every prayer service.
And for parents for their children.
Right, parents for their children. Let me just go on just briefly. Forever young. May God bless you and may God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others. Let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. May you build a ladder to the stars. What is that? Who does that remind you of?
Jacob.
Jacob. This is the priestly blessing is usually a blessing from fathers to sons.
Right.
What is the name of one of Bob Dylan's children?
Jacob?
Jacob Dylan, who's actually a pretty well-known musician. I guess you're not a big fan.
No, well, I'm a big fan, but I'm not.
Jacob Dylan is
I can't compare to you, Calev.
So Jacob Dylan is his son. So clearly, this is his version of the priestly blessing. And you could see how much his Jewishness has impacted on Bob Dylan, certainly on his life, though we know less about that. I know a little bit thanks to Louis Camp, but certainly on his music. So let me just say to Bob Dylan, however you may feel or say now, may God bless and keep you always. May you stay, Bob, forever young and forever Jewish as well.
Amen. Happy birthday, Bob Dylan. Thank you, Calev. That was really, really helpful and informative and actually quite uplifting. And that's it for this edition of Jerusalem Dispatch podcast from the offices of the Jerusalem Post. And
Elliot, may you stay forever young.
Amen. Thank you, Calev.